This is Laura Barrera with Your Main Concern, and you're listening to the Opportunity Project. My guest today is Megan Hampton. Megan is an advisory software engineer for IBM's Data Privacy Passports. Megan graduated from NYU with her degree in electrical engineering and ventured out into a software role when she accepted her position at IBM. Currently, she is balancing her time as a software developer and also as the lead security focal point for her team. In her spare time, Megan volunteers her efforts to expose young minorities to the possibilities of working in STEM-related careers. Not long ago, before I retired, Megan and I were both mentors for a P-TECH program at the Newburgh Free Academy in Newburgh, New York. P-TECH is a global education model for grades 9 and above, where students simultaneously earn a high school diploma and an associate's degree in applied sciences in a 4 to 6 year period. As we celebrated the 2019 school year completion, I heard Megan being recognized for organizing an event for some of the students at the school called She Can STEM. And I finally now have the opportunity to talk to Megan about the importance of STEM and her desire to grow a mentoring partnership that inspires girls to pursue careers much like her own. Hi, Megan. Thanks for joining me today. I'm so pleased to have this conversation with you. Let's jump right in and talk about STEM. So a lot of people in our circle, the technology field, would understand what STEM is. But for anybody listening who might not understand that, would you maybe give us a brief explanation of what STEM is and why you think that's so important today?
Well, I just want to say, Laura, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be a guest today. And what the acronym STEM stands for is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I think it's really pertinent that the younger generation get involved because that is the way the world is going, right? I mean, as we progress generation after generation, we are becoming a more technology savvy kind of world. And so I feel like to really advance one's understanding of what's going on in the world, they really would benefit if they had like a technology background because there's so many jobs that do require or even kind of want someone who has that type of background, and then therefore they can really I don't know, I guess I would just say benefit mankind in so many ways. And so for me personally, being exposed to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, I really feel like I've become a more well-rounded individual. Not only am I just a female, but I'm a female who has this knowledge which equals to power, power to make a change. And I want that for the younger generation coming on board.
I love that answer. Thank you. And just thinking that technology is everywhere today. I mean, every industry has some sort of technological aspect to it. It's definitely a way of the world. So for me, Megan, science and technology is sort of in my blood. My dad was still an IBMer when I was actually hired into the company. And now, decades later, I have two grown children who are computer science engineers. So it's kind of like a family characteristic. So tell me, where did you get your interest in computer science and technology?
Well, Laura, I think my journey is quite an interesting one. From a young age, my dad did expose me to technology, but more so from the hardware perspective. So he's really good at fixing computers. I mean, anytime we had an issue, I remember being 6, 7 years old and he coming over and taking the computer apart. And I get to see the inner workings. I get to see what a chip looks like, motherboard, all of these things that I never knew. I was like, what is this? What's that? And I was just intrigued. I couldn't help but want to know more of how this worked, how something so compound, it wasn't even that big, I guess, in my mind, but something as big as a computer can do so many fascinating things. And how does it work?
Mm.
Why does it work the way it does? I just had so many questions early on. And my dad really encouraged me. So instead of like buying me coloring books of Barbie dolls, he bought me coloring books of cars, like Hot Wheels instead, because he said he wanted to expose me to technology. And that was his aspirations for me, him being an immigrant. And so that was just ingrained in me, and to the point where I said, you know what, this is something I think I really want to do. So I knew right away. So I got my degree in electrical engineering from NYU, But when I came to IBM, surprisingly, I got involved into computer science. Now, in college, I wasn't the best at computer science, I honestly have to say. It was something I viewed as challenging. Electrical engineering hardware, I understood. It made sense. But computer science is like, what is this? But ironically enough, my first manager had the same kind of position where he was hired into IBM as a computer software or engineer, I should say, developer. And he actually had an electrical engineering, degree, but he excelled so much being a computer scientist compared to being an electrical engineer. And he viewed the same thing for me in that sense of, you know what, maybe she will excel much more if she was out of her comfort zone. And that was so true. So initially when I was learning, I started being a tester. And the great thing about being a tester is you're paid to break the software, right? Understand its inner workings. So I think that was awesome to learn how to be a tester, how to really understand IBM's products and functionality without knowing too much of computer science. And then from there, I said, you know what? I think I want to be a developer. Like testing's great, but I want to create something from nothing. That excited me, that you can write all these lines of codes, hundreds and thousands of lines of codes to actually create something from nothing. That was impressive. And I was like, I want to be a part of that. So again, didn't go to school for it, but learned a lot on the job. And I actually fell in love with computer science. And I think it's because it was the challenge that I fell in love with. And it's still that way for me to this day. Like if I get a new assignment and I might not know how to go about solving the problem, I might, talk with my coworkers. They might give me some feedback, understanding, and I go off and research. And when I research and then I'm able to actually start coding and understand the logics and everything behind it, and then it works, now that's the best feeling of accomplishment. Like, wow, I did this.
Yeah.
Now I still get excited. I still like scream, yay, like I'm 5 years old and jump up and down for joy just because I was able to do that. I can say I did it on my own. That is like the best feeling ever. And I still love that high to this day.
That's fabulous. And a couple of things I picked up on in your answer, which really resonate with me and my own transition from being a software engineer and designer to retiring and now being a coach. You talked about being curious and intrigued, and curiosity plays such a huge part in our growth as individuals and as, career-oriented people. I love that you were able to step forward in those inquiries and really explore what was out there for you, and nobody held you back from that curiosity. It's a great way forward.
Yeah.
So Megan, when you think about how you started in technology, what is it about that experience that you might like to model for young women today who are considering a similar career?
I think the biggest thing for me, again, is going back to that word challenge. Becoming a software engineer was not an easy road for me at all. And I think a lot of females, unfortunately, shy away from such roles is because of it is not so easy or maybe quickly understood right then and there. And so what happens? They give up, or they say, you know what, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not a man. This is a man's job. I clearly shouldn't have any interest in this. And it's like, who told you that? Who said you could not do this? Why do you believe you cannot do this? And it's unfortunately because we're not teaching, especially females of color from a young age, that they can be or do whatever they want to, as long as they set their mind to it. And exposing them to technology, right then and there from, again, young age. See, I was fortunate to have that, but a lot of females do not. So if you're taught, okay, well, maybe, you should be a dancer or a singer or a teacher or a nurse. And don't get me wrong, those are all great fields, but why can't we also include becoming a software engineer? Mm-hmm. Why is that something that is so impossible or not reachable? Why? And that is something that bothers me to this day. And that's why I want to expose more people, especially starting young, to technology, to engineering, so that they can get used to the failure, because failure is only the way so we can get to our success. We're going to fail. I know there are times where I didn't do well in school. I had grades, I was like, oh my goodness, it's horrible. But if I gave up, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Yeah.
So it's that perseverance of knowing that you can do it and having that great support group rally around you like I had. And I think that's what I want to be for so many young people is they need a support group. They need someone to say, I think you can do it. I believe in you. Let's do this together. Let me help you through it. I've been through the experience. I know what it's like. Maybe me helping to guide and mentor you can help you overcome such hurdles that I, had to overcome too. And that it's okay not to get something right away. Doesn't mean you're not smart or, you're so stupid that you can't figure it out. That's okay. And if people want to make you feel inferior, that has nothing to do with you. That's their own insecurities. And I had to learn that very quickly in college when I was always one out of two girls in all of my classes. And it's sad. We need more
Yeah.
females in the tech industry.
Yeah, you bring up so many great points there. Failure and success are really two sides of the same coin. And I do a lot of training in this area with people. You can't go forward in growth without expecting to fail. It's that perseverance you talked about, Megan, that really makes the growth possible because you have to accept defeat once in a while and still say, there's something here for me. And if others can do it, I can too. There are plenty of people who can't always envision what something can look like unless they can see it first.
Mm-hmm.
And I admire so much that you want to be in that position for people to follow in your footsteps to success there. In 2018, I believe it was that you held your very first She Can STEM event. And Megan, where did that idea come from?
Well, the idea came from my mentee from the PTech organization, which is, geared towards helping inner city youth be able to graduate not only with their high school diploma, but as well with an associate degree within 5 or even 4 years if they could. And I think it's such an excellent program. It gives people who might not necessarily be able to afford universities an opportunity to get a head start so that honestly within 2 years of already completing their associates, all they have to do is an extra 2 years and easily get that job done. And then they can either go out into a, tech related career or, they can even be an apprentice. IBM has so many apprentice opportunities for those who don't go after a 4-year degree. And I think that is such
Mm.
an amazing privilege. But anyway, long story short, so she's a part of this program. So when I first met my mentee, I saw her potential. I saw that she was very bright, but she was not thinking about technology, engineering. It seemed like she was here only because her parents told her, you need to be in this program. This is an excellent program and opportunity for you. And when she met me, I think she was startled because I looked so close to her age, which I am. So for her, it's like, you're an engineer? Like I'm expecting this and you're not that.
Mm.
This is what I was taught my whole life what an engineer would look like. Again, stereotyping.
Yeah.
So who are you? And I think that curiosity, me telling her my story, exposing her to engineering, and she's like, oh, this is fascinating. I never knew this. To the point where she started asking me, what do you do for work, like your day job? And I tried to explain from a high level overview. She's still looking at me puzzled, very perplexed. What do you do exactly? So I'm like, okay, in IBM, we have so much words and jargons for different things she doesn't understand. So I'm like, okay, the best way to explain is to show. So I said, what if I had a day where she can come to IBM and a few of the other P-Tech girls just to see what a female engineer would do in a day? And from that point on, that little idea became an event. At first, it was like maybe a lunch, luncheon day, something like that. But it became a full-blown event where there was about 12 girls, and then we had them for the whole entire day from breakfast. So they came like 8 in the morning. So that means they had to leave their house 6 something because Newburgh is a good 30-minute drive from their school to the Poughkeepsie site. So that took a while. So I was very impressed that they were all up, ready and alert. We had great discussions. We had an executive come and welcome them. And after that, I gave them an overview of engineering, what it's about, the potential salary you could make, because kids appeal to money. And not only that, but showing them the women who came before us to pave the way to, to become engineers, I should say. And from there, I had a panel that I like to call the girls' room, where there were several females within IBM, all different backgrounds from an ethnic standpoint, as well as from a career standpoint. They all did different things. So we had a designer, we had someone who does ID, so they write the documentation. We had, of course, a software engineer, we had a hardware engineer, we had a offering manager. So we had all these different people that they can relate to. And hearing their stories. So maybe one girl can gravitate towards one girl in particular and vice versa. And that's what I wanted them to understand, that being involved in STEM does not mean you have to be an engineer if that's not what you want to do. But it means you can be a designer, right? You can be an offering manager and still learn about technology and understand the basics and the principles of it. And my mentee loved the idea so much that she was like, oh, you got to do it again. Everyone was like, you have to do it again. So I got all this funding, all the support, and I'm super appreciative of it, to the point where the hands-on, surprisingly, nature of the event was the biggest hit. So I created a Python challenge for them to code in. Now, some of them had coding experience, some of them didn't. But I think, again, they loved the challenge of it, and they loved that I had people going around the room and kind of guiding them. I said, don't give them the answers, right? We don't want to give them the answers. We don't want to hand things to them, but we want to guide them to the direct and right answer. Give them little hints, question things. Should you do that? Why should you do that this way? What if you did it this way? And that helped them to really think and start to problem solve like an engineer, to the point where they got so excited, again, that same feeling I get when I solve a problem, that these girls were screaming, jumping up with joy. We're so focused, like we were supposed to go to lunch, and they were like, no, I'm not done with my, coding challenge. We got to finish. And I loved it. I loved every second of seeing how hard they worked. Even my own mentee, she was soaring. And I'm like, look at what you can do. And now she's like, wow, okay, I can probably do an internship in like software development at IBM now. I think I can do it. And this is something, again, she would have never considered before I exposed her or creating this event. So again, how can females in particular aspire to be something that they do not see? And them seeing all of these girls, all 12 of them, seeing other females that are young, that are beautiful, that are accomplished, it makes them say, wow, I can do it if they can. And that's exactly the message I wanted to bring forth with the event.
That's fabulous. Just so inspiring. And I almost feel like I was there, even though I wasn't, because I can imagine how exciting it was for not only the girls participating, but for you and the other women you brought in to be on the panel and to be an example of what these girls could eventually be someday. It must have been very exciting. So can you share some of like what happened after the event? What was some of the feedback after the event, and where are you going from here with it?
I had such positive feedback from a lot of executives, from my management team, from all girls who, attended the event, as well as people in their high school who overheard the event, because I had a very strict policy. I said, this is going to be a fun event that I'm spending my time and energy putting together. They need to at least have a 90 GPA and above.
Okay.
And that was a strict requirement in a sense of, I wanted to make sure that the girls that came were serious. Like, they didn't view this as just a day off from school,
Wow.
but that they were really interested and invested in trying to learn something new. And so they found out to the point where at P-Tech, they actually host their own She Can STEM event for the girls in the high school, so that everybody, it's very different than my event, but it has the same principle and guiding factors of the mission, which is to expose females to technology. But I do appreciate the fact that P-Tech kind of modeled their event after mine. It made me feel good, like, okay, look, they're trying to make it bigger than just my little small event at IBM, but maybe something that could be nationwide if possible. And then also too, A lot of media got involved, which is great, recording my
Mhm.
stories and sharing it with others, which was fantastic. And then I was able to do it again for the year of 2019, and that was awesome. And unfortunately, I was going to try to do it again for 2020, but because of circumstances, it's not the same to do it
Yeah.
virtually compared to in person. The whole point of the event for me was that in person feel, that nature of being together with the girls and really exposing them. And I wanted them to be able to get that feel and not cheat them of the experience, because it definitely wouldn't be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel for that too. Hopefully next year will be just a better experience all around for everybody, and you'll be able to get back together and bring the girls in to that kind of environment again. For the girls who have the opportunity to attend one of your events, what opportunities does that open up for them after?
I think the biggest opportunity opened up is the networking aspect. Them getting to actually meet our executives. They're so busy. And so the fact that they're sacrificing time out of their busy schedule to meet with these girls shows them that they're important to them.
Mm.
And not only that, a lot of them took a liking to the executives, and also the other young female software engineers, developers, office managers, and designers who volunteered their time to be a part of the event. Seeing them there gave them so much inspiration to do more. And then, even like I mentioned before, there's internship opportunities.
Mhm.
Most of the girls initially wanted to do internships that were not technology based, but most of them now, after the event, want to do internships. They have the confidence to say, I will do an internship that requires me to code or to do something out my comfort zone, because now I believe in myself. So I see that difference. And I see the difference in my own mentee. She got the opportunity to be a part of the IBM Systems magazine and have her photo in it.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Oh, that's great.
so, so her parents are so proud of her. They still, brag and show the magazine to everyone. So she was able to get a lot of the the benefits, mainly because I'm her mentor, and the event was all inspired because of her.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And at the end of the podcast episode, folks can find the link for the magazine article so they can go and read it. But Megan, you've talked a couple of times now about the comfort zone. So you talked about how you kind of had to get out of your comfort zone for what you were studying in college to make that transition to computer science. And then you talked a little bit about the girls getting out of their comfort zone to think differently about the future opportunities that lie ahead for them. How about for you? Is this putting this event together and doing this, seeing a gap and filling it? Was there anything in there that required you to get out of your comfort zone?
It's funny. I think planning this event came very natural, and only because by nature I'm a planner. I plan everything, and I'm very organized. And if I don't have things a certain way, I can't function correctly. So when I had the idea for the event, it came to me. I was like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Like I had like the different time slots. I had when people were gonna be present, who was gonna speak at what time. So for me, it was super natural. I think it was actually exciting more so to do this event. This is something that I never heard, being done within IBM. And so for me to kind of like spearhead it, I was like beyond excited to see how it would go. It did take a lot of effort and energy because, I still have to do my day job at the same time, decorating and preparing all of the logistics, the coding challenge. We even had a Raspberry Pi challenge. So all of those things, getting these things ready, getting their laptops ready with the software needed, installing Python, all those different things, that takes time. So I
Mm.
think that was the biggest thing, was just the amount of time needed to be spent. That it could be overwhelming, but at the end of the day, it was worth it. I know after doing the event, I was like, that great feeling of, okay, it was done. But yes, it could be super overwhelming. I mean, I remember staying at the office until like 9, 10 o'clock at night trying to decorate, the space for the girls,
Mhm.
because I wanted it to be very girly. I didn't want it to be a generic event like, okay, here you go, here's some food. No, I decorated. We got balloons, streamers, banners. I decorated the room with hot pink and teal colors because I wanted them to, I don't know, embrace being a female. I think you can
Mhm.
embrace being a girly, feminine female and also be an engineer or whatever the case may be, that as long as it's a career in STEM, it's fine. I think the two go hand in hand. So that's why I picked hot pink. I was like, no, we're going to make this event super girly to the point where everyone sees it and they walk by and they're like, what is going on here? So that's what I wanted.
You've already talked about quite a few opportunities that you've had in your career and in your life to get to where you are in your career. Megan, is there any other specific experience or opportunity that you might like to share with us?
Yeah, so even how I was able to get the opportunity to come to IBM, I remember graduating from university and the job I initially, planned to do after graduation, it didn't pan out for, unforeseen reasons. And so, I'm struggling here and sitting here like, what am I going to do with my career? And at the right moment, I had an event. Again, it was a tea party to just have the females at my school NYU to kind of talk and discuss their stresses, their plights, what they're going through, trying to make it and graduate on time. And it was nice because we all got dressed up again, the feminine aspect. And we had cookies and tea and juices and a great breakfast spread. And then I had a guest speaker come, and the guest speaker actually was the first Black female distinguished engineer named Dale Davis Jones from IBM. And she came to speak, and her speech was very powerful to the point where a lot of the females there, were trying to network and connect with her and keep in touch so that they might have an opportunity to work at IBM in the
Mhm.
future. Now, for me, I wasn't even thinking I would have a chance to work at IBM, honestly. I was just happy that I was going to graduate on time. um, but it was funny to know after the event, she looked at me and whispered, "When are you going to start working for IBM?" And I was shocked. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then 6 months later, she put a referral in, and I was at IBM. So the connection was great to have. Networking is super important. So she helped me get my foot in the door. But what's keeping me here is my own work ethic and skill set.
Yeah.
And she was able to see that just by meeting me and talking to me, those few times. And I appreciate that because it helped me get to where I'm at. But also, I did a lot of work to progress in my career, not be stagnant. And another great, and I call it a blessing, was recently I was asked by the senior vice president of IBM to have an interview with him in front of the whole IBM,
Ooh.
yeah, about my recent trip to Africa. I went to Malawi, a refugee camp, and I also did another Python coding challenge for some of the refugees there. It was 70 females that were able to
Wow.
attend. So I was able to get that interview in and talk with the senior vice president about what I did and the experience of going to Africa for the first time, especially Malawi, and being in a refugee camp and what that taught me. So that's something also I was able to get IBM Systems Magazine to include that article in their recent publication. So that was awesome.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really great. Yeah, you've had some fabulous opportunities then. And it's not just about getting the opportunity, is it, Megan? It's about being the person who is willing to take the opportunity too. And I'm sure again there are moments of growth there for you and having to overcome the comfort zone. I just love to know more about your trip to Malawi.
Yeah, so there is a person within IBM who usually goes to Africa quite a bit. She's an advocate for, STEM and trying to get people in underprivileged areas and countries and whatever the case may be to learn more about technology
Hmm.
for free in a sense. And when I met her, the person who introduced me was like, "Oh, Megan's going to Malawi." And she was like, "This person goes frequently. You guys should connect." And from there, we connected. And she looked at me and said, "Why don't you, go to Malawi and do what you did here in America? but for them. Do something a little bit smaller. And why don't you have like a Python challenge or just teach the girls how to code? And I was like, that is such a great idea. And not only that, she had the great connections to get me into the refugee camp. So the way it works, you can't just wander into the refugee camp. Most refugee camps are so far away from the inner city that it's not easy for people to get to. And
Okay.
it's quite expensive just to travel there. And I was fortunate enough to have the accommodation set up where they approved of me having access to the refugee camp, which actually used to be a prison. And you can tell by looking at the Lake refugee camp. Um, when I got there, I almost wanted to cry, just seeing what these people had to endure. Africa taught me so many life lessons. It taught me to be thankful and very grateful for what I have, because I met people who literally had nothing. And yet they were so much more happy.
Yeah.
I mean, so much more happy
Oh,
than people who had quote unquote everything from a material standpoint. And seeing that they had little and they still wanted to be giving, still wanted to share, had beautiful families, were so loving. When the girls met me, when I entered the refugee camp, so much love, so much support. They were excited to meet me. The first couple of questions they had for me was, how old am I? Am I married? Do I have any kids? And do I live by myself? So when I answered my age, I told them, no, I'm still single, I have no kids, and I live by myself. You can hear the gasp in the room.
mm,
Because from a, African culture, you aspire to marriage very young. And when you're in a refugee camp, that's what you're taught. You're like, you need a man to take care of you because financially, maybe your parents cannot. So if they're able to marry their daughter off, they get a bride price from it so that it can help support the family financially, and then someone else is taking care of the daughter. But here's the problem. Oftentimes than not, these girls are so young, 16, 17, maybe younger, sometimes 14, and they're being married off to someone who is twice their age,
wow.
who abused them physically, sexually, emotionally. And I met these girls. Some
Mm,
of them told me their story. One girl told me she was beat by her father for wanting to come to my event because
oh,
she was told she only should focus on getting married. That's it. Why are you focused on becoming an engineer? That's silly. You're in a refugee camp. You could never become an engineer.
oh, that's so sad.
hmm So just meeting them, they changed my mindset forever. They're just so sweet. And some of them try to keep in touch with me. A lot of them can't afford to, but one girl in particular, told me her story that her mother was killed because of xenophobia, just horrible things that happened to her. And now she's, forced from living a normal life to in a refugee camp. Such a beautiful young girl. And
Mm,
she's trying to get out. And there are a lot of people, unfortunately, who are not able to. And I had the opportunity to meet someone. He was a young man who was able to successfully get out the refugee camp. So he was a refugee from the Congo, and someone believed in him,
mm,
sponsored him, gave him a great opportunity to work as a technician, so that he can become an engineer and go to school. And now he is out of that refugee camp. But guess what? He still volunteers to this day
oh,
at that refugee camp
wow.
because that was his beginning. So I think it's a great testimony to see him that he was able to successfully get out. And so can these other girls and boys. And I appreciate that he's so consistently still there trying to help them. And they keep telling me, they need you. They need you to come back. And I'm like, I would love to, but especially not right now. But
Yeah, yeah.
it would be such a dream to go back to that refugee camp, because those conditions were not easy, especially not for a female.
Hmm.
And to see them having to endure that type of lifestyle, who am I to complain about my life?
Wow. That's so powerful, Megan. It really is to be a part of helping build up other people who don't hear those messages often enough, if ever, that there's hope, there's potential. That had to be such a powerful experience.
Yeah, it's still a life changing experience in total. And being of African descent, you hear stories of Africa and you're curious and you're like, you always wanted to go, but I couldn't afford to go at a young age. And then, the timing was right. I actually had some good friends who are from Zambia, who hosted me, and I had friends from Malawi that I met along the way. Um, and that is when I said, okay, I can go to Africa now that I can financially, support myself and be able to go. And not only that, I have connections there that I can stay with that I know I feel safe.
Mhm.
Um, and it was great to live like a native. That's the best experience. So I know people who go to Africa and they stay at a hotel, but they'll stay at the best hotel. And
Mhm.
of course, you have to do that for your safety. But if you have the chance, if you know people, I think the best experience is to live like a native, to see what they go through. I mean, to take bucket showers, to have to use a squat toilet, outhouse, as you would call it, to not have access to things like deodorant because it's too expensive. The things we take for granted,
Right.
or to cook outside on an Ebola, which is like this hot cooking pot, um, because you can't afford a refrigerator or a stove. That is what I endured. And I loved every minute of it because it humbled me. I feel humbled.
Yeah.
These people taught me something. Now I don't waste the same. Like, I know when I was in Africa, I asked for some tissues, and they gave me one.
Mm.
When I was like at a food store, and I'm like, one tissue, this is it? And they're like, yeah, here we don't waste,
Mm.
you know. And in America, what do? We get a whole bunch of tissues. We go through a drive-through at a local restaurant, get a whole bunch of tissues, and then throw them out if we don't need them.
Yeah. Wow.
And they're lacking supplies, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is amazing to me. And unfortunately, they assume the way they live in Africa, everyone else has the same circumstances. I
Mm.
remember they looked at me and said, yeah, you guys have malaria in America, right? I'm like, no, we don't have malaria. Yeah, you guys have these circumstances. No. And that's because most Africans cannot afford to get off the continent. So they have no idea but their present circumstances, which is good in a way because it helps them to be appreciative of what they do have,
Mhm.
instead of what we do here in America, which is we compare ourselves to other people all the time. Well, they have a bigger house, they have a bigger car. I want that, and it's like the selfishness. It's like, why can't you just be content with your life? And happiness is not contingent upon material things or other people.
So true. So
And that's the lesson they taught me. I don't understand why we always assume, we go on social media and compare and say, oh, well, maybe if I had more money, or maybe if I had this, then I'll be happy. And it's like, no, because once you get the thing that you assume to make you happy, you're still miserable. And
yeah.
that's because you are not realizing the secret to true happiness.
Yeah, that's true. I teach a lot about that too, Megan. That's just such an inspiration. Thank you for sharing that information with us about your experience. November is a great month to be talking about gratitude with our national holiday here in the US. Thanksgiving is coming. But also, I brought you here in November specifically because November 8th is STEM Day, which is why I originally wanted you here. But here we are talking gratitude, and I just love it. So thank you
Um,
for taking us down that journey. Where can others learn more about your events, and maybe even they're inspired to have their own? How can they maybe reach out to you and network? As you say, networking is a
yeah. So for anyone who is curious, they can always feel free to find me on LinkedIn. My name is Megan Hampton, and easily DM me and I'll get back to you. I am more than happy to help and assist in any way possible.
beautiful. Thank you so much, Megan. You are truly an inspiration to myself, and I'm sure to so many others whose lives you're touching through your work. Thank
Oh, thank
you.
you.